All right, all right. This is episode 5 of Ars Cryptotica. Henry, how are you doing?
Fantastic. I'm very excited about our guest today. I just want to jump right in and not get not get sidetracked by tangents. So I'd like to welcome Nick Chan, co-founder of Refinable, and a platform that I'm using to great success and am finding to be really, on the frontier of doing great things. And the community response there it's intelligent, it's engaging. So there's a lot happening over at Refinable. So we invited Nick to come on, and so let's welcome Nick Chan. How are you, sir?
Hey, thanks, guys. It's just such an honor to be here. I think I'm super looking forward to this to really talk more about just, I guess, NFT art, as well as what we're doing at Refinable. So we just have a lot of recent big updates from our platform. So I'm super glad to hear that, Henry, you're part of our platform and you're seeing good stuff on there and having good progress. So we're taking it one step at a time. So it's always good to get some direct communication with our users, as well as people who are thinking about the future of NFTs.
Yeah, so let's begin with why don't you unpack the Refinable vision for our audience, like its inception, maybe a little bit of the history, maybe ideological intentions, like on a personal level for you, current and future market focus, ideas about user experience, where things might change or develop in that category, and maybe milestones touched in future steps, near long term. I know that's a lot. I can ask you again as you need. We need to check back on what I just asked.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot of questions packed into one. So I can take it at the first step, right? So to unpack really what Refinable is, so our mission is really to create an accessible environment for any user, any brands, any communities to really start engaging with NFTs. I think the main issue right now is that a lot of the NFT marketplaces out there have great features, they have a great community, but the main thing is that they're all built on Ethereum. And so on Ethereum, there's a huge issue, which is just that gas prices are just really expensive, right? So if you could kind of average around 20 to maybe upwards of like 500 US dollars per transaction if the network is very congested, like this past week. And so we really see this as there's a lot of potential with NFTs. And if your gas prices and your cost per every transaction is going to be that expensive, it kind of precludes a lot of creativity. And it also precludes a lot of the progress that we can make with imagining what NFTs are actually used for. So I think one of the immediate issues that we saw was this issue. And so we wanted to have an immediate solution. So that's why we decided to create accessibility as our North Star metric for our users, which is something that is ultra low cost, something that is very secure, and something that is relatively fast. So these are the three things that we really count as accessible when we think about NFTs for our users. So that's sort of the immediate value add that we do want to, get out to the world so that people can start experimenting with NFTs. The second part is that we really find that I always tell people that NFTs are very unique in that they are very community driven. Unlike say Bitcoin or Ethereum, you can't really price an NFT that well. And because NFT are all intrinsically unique, right? There's no copy of it, there are comparables, but there's nothing exactly the same. And so it really takes a whole community of users, of people to really impart value and meaning to that NFT. And so every NFT is actually inherently community based. And so even though Refinable is an NFT marketplace, the thing that we're trying to support is really communities, right? And so understanding that, the way that we think communities should function is that every brand out there is a community of its own. Every interest, every hobby, every IP. So with that in mind, we really want to bring on these existing communities onto Refinable and create an environment for everyone in that community to, engage with NFTs. And so this really translates to a separate vertical for us in that we are really focusing on, say, giving brands and different IPs and communities a whole space to work in. So one of the things that we do is that we have a general marketplace, which is open to any users to come and create, buy, sell, and trade art, trade NFTs actually. And then the other side is that we want to create a more easy on-ramp for a lot of businesses to really come on, engage with their community, and not request that their community pays hundreds of dollars in terms of gas fees, similar to other platforms. So I think making things sort of sensible for brands and existing communities, people that are not in blockchain to really come in and try out something that is actually very, very cool and for sort of very digitally savvy. I think that is sort of the future that we do want to build.
So when I'm trying to envision this, the idea of all of these brands, and in my head as you were talking, I was seeing like a marketplace, right? A general, like almost like a farmer's market, right? Where you have the general community that's walking around the center area of the courtyard, and they're all talking and having coffee. And around this central marketplace is like little shops, and where people can then access individual brands through the platform and sort of like have a user experience, or perhaps it's a commercial selling point. Is that essentially what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the mark. That is exactly sort of the thing that we try to imagine. So I think another way to put it that I would like to describe is, we're kind of extrapolating the future of what we envision Refinable to be. But imagine if it's crossover between, say, Craigslist, Etsy, and a little bit of, Patreon. I think that's sort of the area that we do want to exist in. It's definitely very, very new. There hasn't been anything similar in that regards, but at least we'd like to be one of the first people to build toward that vision. It's quite a big undertaking, of course, because these are names of legendary software companies. But at least I do think this is a new sector that I think NFTs can start defining, which is an intersection of a lot of different things.
It is an intersection of a lot of different things, at the root of which, though, and I would like to touch on this as we move forward today. The most important to me as an artist, most important aspect of bringing analog work into a digital realm was historically the problematic concern about there's no way to prove originality. So, in the analog art market, that is the non-digital art market, we would refer to something as called provenance, which is sort of the life story, the history of transaction, how a work moves from a collector to an institution to a collector, etc. And the value accrual of an individual work, in one way that it accrues value is through that life history, and that life history is called provenance. In the digital art world, up until this radical step forward in the NFT markets, there was never a way to establish a digital file, a digital image, a digital object or anime or whatever. You could not establish that as being the original. And so that is in my mind, that is the radical step forward. And so when you're thinking about working with brands, is that a big part of the dialogue with those brands, or will be a big part of the dialogue? Like, how does originality matter to these brands? So I would just say with the NBA shots, when they started bringing those NFTs, so anybody can watch, Steph Curry drop that 3 in the playoffs, and they can share that video cut. But because the NBA shots minted a 1 of 1, that you could own that shot in the context of its, historical moment that was monetized by organizations that monetize them for Steph Curry. So in that way, it's profound. It matters. It has, an excessive amount of value, and value directly relates to the ability to prove originality. So I want to throw that out there and see what you thought about that.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. The way that I would explain it is that even with the emergence of NFTs are purely just a technology that can help, accelerate or even simplify a lot of the processes that go behind the provenance, the authenticity, and et cetera, et cetera. I think all of these things that you mentioned are core parts of what makes something valuable, right? It's a storytelling, which is really the provenance, the storytelling, the authenticity, that there's someone to verify, a trusted source to kind of verify all these things. And basically people to sort of market it and trade it and auction and find value and price discovery and all of that stuff. With NFTs, none of that core part really changes. It's really just a new layer to really do your transaction and really store all these information on there. So I really don't think just because something is an NFT, it makes it more or less valuable as a physical object. I think you brought up NBA Top Shops, and I would like to just point out that, hey, even without NBA Top Shots, right? If NBA was to just release a collection of these, singular prints of photos that was taken by, say, their photographers and auction it at Christie's or Sotheby's or just on their own websites, they would probably do equally as well. Or probably not as well, just because these are physical prints and that there's some hassle with these things. But I think at the end of the day, if there is a marketing issue around NFT that makes it, there's an air of mysticism around NFTs, but really it's purely just a technology to onboard all the existing stuff that's already happening. The storytelling that will never go away, right? The proving of the authenticity, I think it makes it a little bit easier. But of course, with blockchain, there are a lot of sort of you would call them copycats or all these duplicates. But I think a small caveat is that with blockchain, you have the whole concept of decentralization, right? You decentralize the responsibility of doing your due diligence to all these people because everyone has the power to do so, right? It's about decentralizing your responsibility so that everyone does the due diligence to verify that they're not being scammed. These are the right things. And I think with blockchain, it's very clear that it is very possible and very easy, right? People just need to, start actually looking into their items a little bit more. So I think all of these things with NFTs, I think it brings to light some of these subjects, which is always good, right? So we can drive the conversation forward. But I don't think it really changes anything that really happens in the backside.
It doesn't. We've had this conversation about authenticity and the copycat, or the process of verification on the sites. It's incredibly important. And what I was going to say was, again, the idea of originality has always been problematic in the digital realm because it's a copy, share, paste sort of world, and this notion that something immaterial could possess value and that could accrue in value. I remember the conversation that John and I had around Beeple, and why I came into the NFT market was because the challenge that Beeple's $69 million sale at auction for his first 5,000 days. Everybody said, well, what are you getting for that? I mean, how is it possible that some immaterial thing that you could possess that kind of value? And I said, what is immaterial that isn't important, or what is most important in all of our lives is immaterial? Like sort of even the concept of value is an immaterial abstraction. And the idea of love and faith in God, or, love of wife and children. So this notion that the digital development that we're seeing now in NFTs can never achieve or attain the significance that the analog art world has across its many genres is ludicrous. And I quite honestly, I think futuristically speaking, it may be the evolutionary next step naturally.
It's always a hard question to really talk about how people value things, right? I think at the end of the day, every person values something a little bit differently. And I try to tell people that it's not that because it's an NFT or that it doesn't exist or it's digital that it's worth less or more. I'm sure if someone came up with some kind of a debt agreement that if you buy this, then you gain the rights to a mansion, then of course it's a digital debt, but yes, it's actually worth real things. And so theoretically, it's a digital asset that has a lot of value too. So the way you think about how you value something else is very different. And for me personally, yes, I would definitely not pay 65 million for a Beeple artwork, but you have to realize there's different ways to think about this, right? But there's many ways. Say, I believe the person who bought it was actually looking to make a statement, right? So they bought it not because of Beeple purely as an artwork. I mean that too, but there's an added bonus of it's a pure marketing opportunity for himself and his fund and his team, right? So if you're really looking at creating a worldwide headline, right? $65 million might be a steal, right? If you're paying, say, millions of dollars for a 10-second ad on the Super Bowl, then this is actually a much better deal if you think about the worldwide impact and the amount of exposure you get. So there's so many aspects into viewing a purchase that you really can't. I can never say like, oh, you made the wrong purchase because it's overvalued. These are all opinions, right? Like there's many talking heads on there, and I think at the end of the day, if you think you got a good deal, then I think you got a good deal. Whether it's a digital artwork, an NBA Top Shop, a CryptoPunk, doesn't really matter, right? So I can't play the part of who of deciding who is including who.
That's fantastic. So milestones, what have been some of the milestones that have really felt good in this journey so far?
Yeah, I mean, talking about milestones specifically with the Refinable team, I think there's been quite a lot of cool things happening. I think we really started working hard in early January, formed the team, got our advisors down, raised our fund, and we basically were able to secure Binance as one of our first major investors. So that was super awesome for us. And around March time, for those of you guys that might not know, Binance is I believe the largest cryptocurrency exchange by trading volume. So they've been a great fan of ours. Later on, we were able to secure investment from Mr. Beast's team, and so that was super exciting as well. I think it's a great validation for the work and the thesis that we're adopting, sort of supporting different communities out there. So that's been fantastic I guess, token launch. So we had a token launch in around late April, which was quite good for the team as well. And then a week ago, this past Monday, we were able to have our soft launch for our platform. I mean, we've been doing our beta for around a month as well. So there's a lot of movement. We released a couple of extra features right here. I think right now we are just focusing on the core foundation of the NFT marketplace. We have we have big dreams and a very tight roadmap. But I think right now it's just about focusing on the core foundation to make sure that Henry, John, yourself can come in, transact easily in a low cost and secure environment, and then slowly we're building feature by feature. We're enhancing the trade features, the social verifications, the discoverability, the B2B sort of vertical. I think all of these things we're just rolling out one by one to really make sure that we are getting something that people find useful and have delivered value into the market.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a fantastic job. Just as a non sequitur, I'd love to see at some point a burn function added. Only because if you make a spelling mistake in the minting, it's terrible. It's happened to me a couple of times, and there's a couple of platforms that I've worked on where they have them and it saves you.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. We actually got that request a lot. It's definitely on the roadmap. I think we're still a little bit better than, say, something like OpenSea if you don't use a lazy mint feature. But then if you were to create something, burn something, and then create something again, that could cost you like $60, upwards of like a couple hundred. Whereas still on BSC, your cost is so much lower. But yes, we have the burn feature coming in. I think it's always just good to have a fail-safe feature.
I will say, another thing that what you mentioned about it being a decentralized platform and community governance being a huge part of this, that it is decentralized in the most extreme sense is liberating the creator communities, because I know in my analog career, and again, John and I have discussed this at length, it's an extraordinary expensive venture to, like, say, I put on a show in Paris, and it was a $30,000 investment to put on a show in Paris. Well, at Refinable, I'm able to build my marketplace, develop relationships with collectors. Sort of in my own way, I'm networking at the highest level. I don't require an art manager. I don't require a business manager. I don't require a curator, a gallerist, a critic, although I invite one day a critical apparatus to develop around the NFT market. I think that'll be fascinating. But yeah, so, in that it's decentralized, really allows for individual creators to take their time and to maximize their steps, because they're not destabilized by all those external forces that govern the analog market. And I think that's hugely important in why this is going to be an active, ongoing, and successful revolution, because you might have, 10,000 struggling artists for every one that breaks through that glass ceiling in the analog art world, and also, and this is a little bit niche-y, but the traditional art world is really streamlined to produce the next generational phenoms in talents and success stories out of the sort of farm of the university system. And so it becomes where if you come from money and you can afford to go to RISD or, one of these major art universities where you have the, like, sort of sitting on the board, as you would say in startup world, you have, this critic, these critics at the New York Times, writing up their student masterwork shows or masterclass shows. Like, all of that is brushed aside. The NFT gives the world of creativity an equal footing, regardless of your financial status in life.
Yeah, I completely second that. I mean, I would just add on to the fact that yes, I think NFTs are a great technology that it kind of puts everyone on the same level, at least on the fulfillment and the discovery side. That yes, everything is ready to go. It's a lot hassle on the overhead side. Anyone can basically be able to start creating and start curating their own works and have their own marketplaces and sort of have the fulfillment part and the payment part handled for them. I think as a tech platform, it is actually very, very interesting. But at the end of the day, even with all these technology, it still takes someone to make the good art, to actually go out there, promote, to really, make their business successful, right? One of the other things that we also do see is that a lot of galleries are also actually quite interested in exploring NFTs as well. I think at the end of the day, Refinable is a general marketplace. There's going to be a lot of content, and we already have a lot of team discussions on exactly how do we make sure people find what they want. Because as a general marketplace, anyone can post content up there. There could be low effort content, there could be high effort content, and anywhere in between the two. So figuring out what exactly is good and what people should pay attention to is quite hard. So we do have a trending feature that sort of pinpoints what people are kind of looking at right now. But galleries are really coming to us as well, and the conversation usually goes, people really trust us in terms of our curation and a taste, and to really find stuff for them because other people just don't have the time, or they don't have the taste, or there's just a reputation around it. So we actually do even see on the flip side that, hey, these people are also very interested in providing their services, right? So you kind of see these two, very, very decentralized movements, and one that's more about just bringing the existing world onto the digital world. And I think these two things are sort of these two sides of the same coin. And you really see very interesting movements on the background about how people are leveraging these technologies to really enable what they currently do and to really enable what could work for them individually in the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic about the galleries reaching out to you. I'm really curious. Have you had conversations with these gallerists about the sort of art historical precedent of what's happening and how they might see it as legitimate? I mean, clearly they see it as legitimate because they're coming to you, but have you had those dialogues or opened those dialogues with gallerists?
Yeah, we've definitely had a few conversations out there. I think a lot of galleries are still looking to understand more, to find, I guess, a reputable source to really, let them know how to think about NFTs in the future. And hopefully I'm doing a good enough job to tell them, to remove that mysticism around it and really just think about, okay, as a business, it's not going to uproot everything you're doing. It's purely just a new thing, a new medium, and a new liquidity pool that you can, sort of tap into. So I think there's a lot of cool stuff happening. It's not going to change the world, anytime soon. There's still like builders like me and my team that's, fighting it every day just to deliver additional features and building it one step at a time. But yeah, so there's definitely a lot of interesting conversations that we've had about sort of the impact that NFT is having on their businesses. But I think the main thing to note in these conversations is that very similar to what Bitcoin did with the whole conversation about money, is that you really can't, there's no exact comparable about what Bitcoin is, right? It could be a cash, it could be a store of value, it could be a medium transaction. There's all these conversations, and I think the same thing is happening with NFTs, right? If galleries are traditionally dealing with a lot of physical traditional art, then think about NFTs as a little bit different, right? But I think the new way to think about it is that, yes, NFTs are actually fantastic for dealing with digital files, right? Because they're both native digitally, it works well. I think it opens up new avenues of how transactions are going to work. But with physical art, there's still a little bit of a nuance that ties in, because at the end of the day, the NFT is a digital item and your physical art exists in the physical world. So there has to be certain connections and enforcements that connect the physical and digital world together. And I think there are several businesses that are looking to make this connection a little bit more legitimate and enforceable. But I think this is still a very early stage, and we're very interested to see what kind of solutions will actually come out of this.
Well, if you want to think about it, we can add to the context here. In the last 50 years, you had as we moved from modern to postmodern in the art world, one of the early conversations around conceptual art that came up was, how can something be transacted that is ultimately immaterial after it passes? And I'm speaking like, say, to performance art. So somebody goes on stage, Marina Akramovic, she does this performance, and if you're present, you experience it. The recording of it might be something that is collectible, but the idea that immaterial moment, meaning after it passes, it no longer exists except as memory, is sort of the same complicated environment that the NFT is experiencing right now. There was famously an artist named Yves Klein, who I see as kind of like a precursor, ideologically speaking, to the whole complexity of the conversation around NFT. He decided that he was going to, he was a Zen Buddhist, and he wanted to offer up a space within the gallery, the context of a gallery space, that the art itself was that immaterial space, that there was nothing there, and that he sold that at a show in Paris for, I think it was $500, the equivalent of around $500 at the time. And they exchanged with the collector gold, actual gold nuggets, and the Yves Klein signed over the rights to the exhibit, which was called The Void. And what ends up happening is then from there, they go down to the Seine, and Yves Klein throws the gold into the Seine, and the collector rips up the ownership. And that is like a radical precedent-setting moment in art history, that what is art, that conversation that started with, the Dadaists, when Duchamp put the urinal and signed it Mutt, and said, no, we get to say what art is. That's also the conversation here. What is art is on the table as we're talking about NFTs, because you're going to have a critical body outside the NFT market on the analog side that's going to, they're going to chomp at the bit for a while, that this is not art, this is not art. Well, guess what? That age-old question was answered 100 years ago. Art is defined by the maker. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
No, I love that story. I think I think at the end of the day, it goes back to the valuation and like, what exactly is art? What exactly are you buying? At the end of the day, as long as the story makes sense to you as the buyer and the purchaser, then I think it makes a lot of sense. But I do think the other thing to add is that things aren't valuable because they are an NFT. The NFT is just purely the way that I would explain NFT to people is that, very similar to a driver's license or a passport number, all of these documents have a unique ID to it, right? And then that ID really points to you as a unique person. So imagine you have this ID that can attach to any object in the world, your wallet, your coin, your pen, your JPEG, and any digital file as well. So your MP3, your JPEGs. So the NFT itself is not what makes something valuable. It is actually the content that's on it, right? So now that you have this ID that can attach to anything, and now we call it an NFT, right? So the important thing in the art world specifically is that I think there are these conversations about ownership and implications that kind of goes into the whole conversation about these modern art and what it actually stands for, and exactly like to your point, like what exactly did that investor buy with that exhibition, and also with the urinal, right? So I think there are different ways of leveraging this technology. Of course, I've definitely seen a couple of items on OpenSea where there have been like a little bit more theoretical and experimental ideas with NFT, and sort of they sold that entire experiment as the NFT item. I think it's getting a little bit meta over here, But I think for most people, right, the NFTs is really going to be used a little bit more on the retail side, I think. And so I think that's really what's going to drive the next generation of NFT and transactions online. Whereas, of course, the art side is always going to be experimented. I think art is really at the forefront of sort of defining the conversation about what is and what is not. So I think you see a lot of interesting conversations at play. But as a person who's building an NFT marketplace, I think these are very interesting to read. But at the end of the day, we're focusing more on the retail applications of where the NFT will take us. You know, how do you tokenize just basic art? And how do you take that forward into advanced utilities, into making businesses want to come in and use NFT as means of storytelling as well as engagement. And so that's sort of the direction that we want to head towards for our platform. But of course, the art thing is like super interesting because we can talk for hours about this. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but well, now to your point about the business marketplace, no, it's all about intention, right? So whoever's minting that NFT is fundamentally sort of activating an intention. So if you're dealing with brands, what is their intention, and how does the NFT, that transactable NFT, sort of represent their intention, and how does that sound to you?
I think right now it's about changing the conversation around NFTs, right? I think a lot of the brands that we're talking to, you know, they haven't worked with blockchain. You know, they might even be a little bit fearful or a little bit skeptical. So now it's really just about bringing these conversations back to a more real and realistic expectation level. And so to start having them imagine, okay, you should really think about NFTs as a new marketing vertical, as a new social media vertical, and as a new sort of digital transaction vertical. So I think once people start thinking about it that way, also another caveat is that for Refinable, we really focus on these long-term partnerships, right? That we want brands to not just have singular drops and just, you know, do a kind of like a pitch and then they leave it alone. But we do want them to think long-term about, hey, you are selling something to your fan base, to your community, and we do think this is a really good way of engaging people, right? And so using NFTs as this new social media vertical to really do things that can drive interaction within community members, drive collecting items, and driving all of these things. With technology, all that barrier to entry and all those friction around that engagement process is a lot lower, right? So I'm personally raised in Hong Kong, and in Hong Kong, just to give an example, you have McDonald's, you have these 7-Elevens, and every single season, like every quarter, they would run these like cool campaigns. Like for example, they have like stamp cards, right? You know, every time, say in January, McDonald's give you a stamp card, and if you collect like 10 stamps within like the next 3 months, then you get to redeem it for something. Or, you know, at 7-Eleven, if you buy like a certain amount of items, then like you get these stickers, and if you collect 100 of these, they'll give you like an oven or something along those lines. So these are ways that I'm very familiar with how brands can engage, have seasonal engagements with their users, their shoppers, or whatever. And these are all existing in the physical realm. With NFTs, you can theoretically, you know, identify every single piece of object in that engagement, right? Every single stamp card, every single person, every single item bought. And essentially you start connecting all these pieces and you see, wow, you know, this could actually be really cool, right? And given the fact that you can trade NFTs like freely with one another, then you could really use this to really increase the amount of, I guess, interactions that your user base has with your brand and with the whole community, as well as even like start telling stories. So I think these are sort of the advanced utilities that I would love to get brands into and to really just like get people more creative about the stuff that they can do. So I think it's I have like a interesting thought about how to sort of bring NFTs back to the masses in ways that they do understand. And yeah, so these are sort of the things we're talking to these businesses about how to manage their expectations with NFTs.
Now, with regards to the re-salability of whatever the brands might bring to market, how are you, building the dialogue around the re-salability within the marketplace, where somebody who purchases the NFT from a brand in the marketplace could then, that's something that can go back to market. Now, is that something you think about?
Yeah, 100%. I think this is not just for brands as well. Just one note about the resellability is that I think we're a very interesting age, right? With this technology, everything is trackable. And so, of course, the whole conversation about NFTs has been the royalty aspect, right? I think on a high level, it changes a lot on how economics and incentives are done for people who work in a digital realm. So, for example, I used to do a lot of website building and general startup stuff. So, if you build a website, you would buy themes, you'd buy icon sets, you'd buy fonts, but there's no secondary market for these things, right? And so if I were to buy a theme or say an icon set from designer one, and then find out a couple years later that I don't want it, I can just like distribute it. Like I can just send that icon set to my friends, right? But with NFTs, you actually have a much more interesting way of engaging, and that because you can have the royalty set up and it fulfills automatically, then technically I could even just resell that to my friend instead of giving it to him because there's no other option to previously. If I resell it to my friend, the original creator actually gets credited back, right? So the incentive structure is that as a reseller, you are actually not competing with the original creator about the actual sell because the creator gets rewarded as well. Whereas previously, creators and resellers are competing for the exact same market, which is kind of messed up, right? So I think on the resellability, you have this change, this very, very subtle change in incentive. And I think people will slowly realize this later on. But just to take it back to your original question, which is the resellability to brands, I think this equally applies to them as well, right? Imagine if, for every, if I have this stamp card and I'm one stamp away and it's like one day left in the season, I'm unable to get them that stamp, then perhaps I can even just like trade it on the market for very cheaply. Or perhaps because it is the last day, then someone can sell it for very expensive. And any of these trades, usually the brands will not get a cut of. But because everything is tracked and on digital, there's it's very possible that the brands could get a cut of every single resale and interaction that happens. So on the resellability, because everything is programmable, anything can happen. With royalties, it really allows a possibility where brands, creators, whoever can really get a piece of the action everywhere. So I would really like to say that NFT enables a win-win for everyone. And previously we exist in these societies and communities and systems, ecosystems that have a lot of controller issues. And now that with technology, with Bitcoin, and with decentralization and all of that stuff, you really, really can exist in a system where there's a lot of win-win potential. And you don't have to play a zero-sum game anymore.
Can you break down for the audience the fine token? And I've actually had people ask me this, like, well, so in Rarible, they have Rari, but the Rari, it's also used for governance, but they have this kickback program where it's like around 10% or something to the buyer and the seller. Is that something in the future of fine, or do you have a different intention for fine?
Yeah, so I think Rari has a very interesting way of doing their tokens. I think it's quite novel for the time that they did it. So we actually we definitely had some inspiration from Variables' tokenomics. I think, we looked at every single NFT marketplace and we decided from our side, at the end of the day, we are running a marketplace business. And so we want this to be something open to the public, that anyone can come in and start creating content. But with the whole creation of content and the whole part about us being on BSC, which is a lot cheaper than Ethereum, that does lower the barrier of entry. And so because we're a general marketplace, there could be a whole inflood of just these crazy, crazy content all over the place. So one thing that we did want to do is just create a little bit of throttle on how much content can be created. So we hold the belief that whoever holds our token is one of the core believers or one of the true fans of our platform and true believers of our platform. So we do want people who hold our token to get access to different levels of benefits. And so that's why the core use case of our token is that if you hold a certain amount of our tokens, you get access to different membership tiers that we call it. So for example, if you hold 20 tokens, you get a silver tier. You hold maybe 100 tokens, you get gold tier. Do not quote me on these numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head. But for example, you hold these tokens and essentially you can get them at a very low cost right now. And you can hold them and essentially that will give you a lifetime benefit into our different tiers. And so these different tiers will give you, say, discounts to our service fee. It will give you additional access to your creation features. So for example, if you don't hold any tokens, then we will definitely have to limit you because, at the end of the day, we just have to protect our community as well. And so, for example, if you don't hold any tokens, you can maybe mint maybe 1 or 2 items like every week or so. But if you hold additional tokens, we will definitely help you up that limit, right? There's different verticals that we think about. There's the creation vertical, there's a discoverability vertical, there's a trade vertical, and all of these features have different levels of, tiered levels that people can access. And so that's how we're really thinking about our core use case for the find token. Beyond that, just to quickly go into it, yes, you can. We're working on allowing people to use their tokens to settle. We're working on additional governance items as well that we do want people to vote and propose items to us for the team to work on. And we're actually working on a couple other benefits to add into our membership tiers. So I think that's how we're currently thinking about it. I think it's actually a business model that a lot of other marketplaces that are not in crypto actually use. And we do think this is the right way to actually proceed.
Yeah, it feels like a take on staking. I mean, that's sort of like a really unorthodox kind of novel, as you said, way of thinking about staking the find coin. So where your staking is, not literal, but metaphorically, you're gaining access depending on your loyalty to the brand.
Exactly. So I think right now we are just requiring users to hold the tokens. I think later on we might add the staking benefit. It gets a little bit more complicated from my side, from the team side, and figure out, okay, what makes the most sense for users? Should they just hold it? Should they stake it somewhere? Should we, count other staking opportunities from other side? But for now, I think the easiest part is just that we want to have our membership tiers low enough that people can purchase their token, believe in the community, take the tokens on the circulating supply, and then essentially just enjoy the benefits of our platform, right? But for those people that want to, are true believers and want the most out of our platform, then yes, you can purchase additional tokens to access our higher tiers, and we hopefully do have the benefits to really, make them want to do so, right? So at the end of the day, I think this kind of token structure incentivizes us as a platform to do well, so that people want to come in and check us out and use us. And I think the best users are people who can actually create an entire livelihood from our platform, right? Artists that, do great art, find Ethereum a little bit too expensive. They can definitely come in, check out Refinable, go create their art. I mean, everything is ready to go, and see where it takes you. We would love to, get the opinions of artists and have people just like create art and make a living off Refinable.
Yeah, I mean, I've done pretty well in the first couple of weeks. I went through the voting process, and I was selected to be one of the early artists on the platform, and it's been fantastic. I mean, my whole experience was rewarding, and I can say I'll be a member for life here. I've been looking forward to the journey with you. So one of the things I think is lacking at most of the platforms, like in the platform itself, is there any interest in building in like blog and community chat in ways in which like-minded individuals within the Refinable community can gather there? Where I understand there's Telegram, but I do feel like there's a detachment from the creator world and what's happening on Refinable and what's happening in Telegram, where you have so many of the sort of speculator crypto enthusiast side. It sort of dominates that, Telegram. And would there be a way to build more community communication accessibility at the site itself?
Yeah, we've definitely been thinking about this issue. So short answer about the platform is that our roadmap is quite busy with all the creation and trading features and the blockchain items. So I think we do not have the social features coming up soon. It has been a conversation to the team about creating something that people can socially engage directly on the platform. But I think for now, what we're looking to do is actually create separate communities for just artists that are looking to converse with one another. So we basically just started our community team. And so that is something that we're looking forward to. So whether or not we will spin up a new Telegram chat just for artists, or we have a Discord channel, we're still figuring that out. I do believe we are leaning towards a Discord channel because it's definitely a lot better than Telegram because it's just one big room and everyone's just like dumping messages inside, whereas on Discord you can have different channels. So I think that's sort of the direction that we're moving towards. So I mean, we just had our soft launch last Monday. So I think we were just fielding a lot of the questions, making sure that we iron out most of the bugs. But yeah, on the background, we're definitely looking to set up our community channels for the artists so that we can start building a community, right? A community of creators and artists, and that's really where we want to be.
Well, and also keep in mind, and it just as a note here, end note on this, from an artist standpoint, and I know I completely understand your main focus with brands and the general community marketplace. But for those artists of significance and genuine intention that come to the space, one of their primary goals is to develop a collector base. And so like as an artist, I've been able to bring my analog art world collectors, some of them, not all of them, because many of them are still terrified of crypto and they don't get it. But the ones that come, they'll come and they already know my work and my history, and they have my paintings or whatever in their house. But now that I'm in the NFT space and I'm on Refinable, and let's say like just this past week, I had somebody who I have no idea who they are, came in and bought up, I don't know, 6 or 7 works. And there's no way for me to say thank you, let's say, to contact this collector who I've never met, and this is their first collection. And so that's something to consider, that that developing the relationship between the collector and the artist in the marketplace is going to be something that every artist that comes to Refinable is going to want, like sort of mechanistically, a way to contact the collector and say thank you and start a dialogue about what is the work that you collected. Because the work that was purchased for me, very important to me. It's all work in social justice activism and mental health awareness, and it's a big project. So, but yet I've had those 6 works, go off into a collection, and as of now, I cannot reach out to him and start that dialogue.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a feature that we have definitely thought about this item. So I think we kind of bundle this under the item of profile verification. At the core of Refinable, we are looking to be decentralized. I think there's sort of an ethos inside the blockchain community about, decentralization, hide your personal data, so you're not personally identifiable. So, but we do also want people to start building out their profile, which includes adding your description, your name, your Twitter handle. And we are exploring right now ways of contacting different users as well, right? So I think these are things that we are thinking about on how to just make it a little bit easier to create that P2P or peer-to-peer engagement, right? For owners and buyers, even just for users in general. So whether or not we're still definitely planning some of these features out. So whether or not, only a purchaser of an item can view the contact information of, a artist or not. I think these are certain nuances to the feature that we're looking to build out. But yes, I think you're definitely on the right mark. I'm glad that we are on the right mark as well, thinking about some of these features. So yeah, I think we do want to incentivize people or make it easy for these connections to happen. But I think right now it's just that our team is growing a little bit, so there's only so much we can do, and our roadmap is quite tight. And so for now, we are focusing more on the creation and the trading features so that we have a little bit more options for people that are looking to create. And as we move on to our roadmap, then yes, we'll include all the additional items with the contact information for the profile. And so it's just a matter of prioritization for the team. And if we get more feedback from the users that, yes, we really want to contact additional people, beyond just the Twitter handles and all of that, then yeah, we'll definitely look to build it in.
Great. Well, and you're doing a fantastic job. Refinable is, it's top of my list right now. I love what you guys are doing. I wanted to go back to what you said, something that I could tell it's a term that's used in your sector, business sector, social media vertical. I find the concept fascinating. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that and how it builds into your whole vision for Refinable.
Yeah, so I guess that's a little bit more on the marketing side, but I think with brands, right, especially, I think a good example would be like Coca-Cola. I think if Coca-Cola is a household brand, but new kids come on, new generations are forming, then people don't have the same brand image as their predecessors or their parents or their older siblings or items like that. So eventually brands will have to focus on the new kinds of channels that these kids are on, or different demographics are on. So for example, right now, I think kids are mostly on TikTok. I think previously they were on Snapchat. Before that, they were on Instagram. And so for these brands that want to, have a certain, I guess, a sales funnel, or they have a certain demographic in mind, then they have to be fluent in sort of these different areas as well. And I think if you think about these different channels and how each channel has a different, I guess, way of communicating to their own users, then I think it's also the same for NFTs, right? I think NFTs really attract a certain crowd of people that are a little more tech savvy, a little bit more experimental. I think now it's becoming a little bit more retail, but I think NFTs definitely have their own benefit in that, people who really go into blockchain and NFTs are looking to try out new things. I think they're curious, and I think that comes with a sense of experimentation that might actually be interesting for brands to really capitalize on. Right? There's also a lot of, I guess, new liquidity and new money flowing around in that space. So it could even be a new social media vertical that has really deep pockets that people can access. I think that kind of speaks a little bit further into the economy of blockchain systems versus the physical world. But by social media vertical, it's essentially a new channel to really access a certain type of demographic that brands could or could not want, right? So I think NBA Top Shop kind of did a very interesting thing where essentially use their NFTs, but you can buy it with a credit card. So that's one way of combining an old world with a new world technology. But for other brands, I think they could go full force, or they could adopt a playbook similar to NBA Top Shop. But at the end of the day, there's new users that kind of concentrate around the NFT channel. That I think it's a really direct way of communicating to them. And I think the last point is just that if you're a brand and you decide to go into NFTs, it might make your brand, it has to make sense to your brand narrative, right? So whether or not you're a tech forward brand and you're looking to go NFTs, I think that makes sense for you. But if you're someone that is traditionally very conservative and then suddenly you go into NFTs, then of course your community is going to be like, what are you doing? So at the end of the day, it has to make sense for their brand. So, treat it as a new social media vertical, a new channel to really pass your message through. But at the end of the day, it really has to make sense for your brand. So when we talk to all these partners, we really try to curate sort of a strategy that makes the most sense for their fan base, what they want to do, where they want to go, and sort of that's the position that we take.
What's interesting too is, if in the world that I live, if I were to ask somebody under the age of 30 about, like millennials and younger, are they crypto knowledgeable? Are they crypto savvy? Are they NFT knowledgeable or savvy? A large percentage of them are, and the risk aversion, which is something you might discuss with the baby boomers right now, people who are knee deep in hedge funds, they're only going to come to the space through the hedge fund, which is a trustable source. But the younger generation doesn't need a hedge fund to help them into crypto, doesn't need to help them to the NFT world. And so, when you're talking to brands, to me, that's a fantastic point, that the future of marketing for brands, that I believe that blockchain spaces are going to be really critical. And those people that take what they perceive as risks now, entering an unknown space, are going to benefit wildly and be seen as sort of pioneers, which is what I would say you are, a pioneer coming into a space and sort of defining a path forward for, like you said, the old world meeting the new. And Refinable is that bridge in so many ways.
Yeah, you're thank you for your kind words. I think right now I think in order to make that jump for a lot of people about, if I were to just put it like super bluntly, like old world, new world, I think I think number one thing is really to drop that air of mysticism. I think number one, I know the conversation around NFTs is not where I would be, was not where I wanted to be, because people are still throwing words like fungibility around. And honestly, I think my English is relatively okay. And first time I read about NFTs, I had no idea what fungibility means. It's not a word that's used in everyday language. I don't fault anyone for being confused about it, because it's not an obvious term, right? And people aren't explaining NFTs in a way that is easy to understand, quite frankly, right? And I think the conversation around these things has to be different. And hopefully, me coming on here has clarified some of these confusing points about NFTs for your listeners. And then we hope to do the same thing for a lot of the businesses that we talk to, right? It's around dropping the sense of the mysticism around NFTs, showing them what is actually possible, these different use cases. I mean, we're not like changing or implementing world shattering concepts, right? I'm not Darwin, but hopefully we are moving the conversation a little bit forward in terms of, okay, hey, these are how you can leverage this technology. This is why you should do it. These are who you can kind of like target. These are, additional liquidity and sort of different money pools that you can kind of tap into. These are sort of the profits and sort of the narrative changes that is going to happen to your brand, right? Making sure that brands we're very transparent with our brands, what is possible. And I think brands have sort of been quite receptive, right? And if not, I think it's completely fine as well. There's this a little bit like morbid quote that goes around in the scientific community where it says, science, the science advances with each dying generation, right? So yes, there's definitely some, old world people or old timers or baby boomers that will never get sort of what we're trying to do or just refuse to listen or believe in a better future. But I think with time, the new generation is ready to come up. They're going to take these stance, and people are more familiar with the language, with the ethos of what we're trying to do. And I think as time progresses, people are really going to start, engaging with NFTs more or seeing it in a different light. And I think with each generation that comes, I think there's going to be more and more changes. It's going to be more accepted, and quite frankly, it's someone has to be at the forefront of defining some of these things. So I think I'm just super fortunate to be able to have some of these conversations and just talk to you guys and sort of explain the stuff that we're trying to do right now, right here.
You may not be Darwin, but I do think you are a component in a Darwinian paradigm shift. There's definitely something evolutionarily speaking going on here. And also, I wanted to say that where science might sort of evolve across generations, the tech world has something called exponential growth rate. And when you think about how it took 2011 to 2019 2020 to see the crypto space explode, and the year of adoption is suddenly upon us, how much faster will this facet of blockchain technology grow, become adopted, and be useful and be trustworthy? I think it's going to go much faster, even so, than the general crypto market, because this isn't a crypto market per se, like not literally.
Mm-hmm.
It's something so much more complex and interesting and usable. I mean, it is a use case unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the problematics of use case with cryptocurrencies is not a problem for NFT. It is its own use case.
No, 100%. So one thing that I would like to also point out is that I think I think NFTs and the general blockchain conversation about Ethereum and Bitcoin is quite different. And that with Bitcoin and Ethereum, you're really challenging really fundamental notions about what is money, what is government, what is decentralization, what is governance, what is consensus. But with NFTs, the conversation doesn't have to be that high level. I think, Vitalik or Satoshi Nakamoto might be the Darwinians, but there's many people out there on the front line trying to build the productizable or more retail level applications to really drive the adoption, right? And one thing that I love telling people is we really exist at a very, very interesting time where there's a lot of macro factors at play that kind of are making this the absolute perfect time for people to start with NFTs and go into blockchain. So the macro factors that are currently happening is that there's a lot of interest into just NFTs in general. There's a lot of money flying around and also a lot of, I guess, spare time, right? So I think these three things just kind of culminate into a huge interest and research into exactly, hey, what exactly is NFTs? And I think NFTs is really the great on-ramp for people to really start learning about blockchain, right? So my ideal scenario is that there's a lot of non-crypto people out there in the world. right? And so people are going to start looking at NFTs as long as Refinable can make it productizable and a lot more easy to understand. They'll see that NFTs are not something super crazy, right? They can start engaging it for, they don't have to buy something. They don't have to buy a $69 million painting, but they can buy something for like maybe $10, $20 and make something cool and fancy for themselves or that has utility elsewhere. And once they start understanding how wallets work and how NFTs work, they can start trading tokens. When they start trading tokens, they'll start looking into the different blockchains, and hopefully they can start diving deeper and deeper and deeper in. And I really do see NFT as a huge on-ramp into learning more about blockchain, and then later on into more DeFi aspects, which I think is DeFi is doing some really, really cool stuff about sort of, managing your own finances and not having to rely on banks and just doing some just absolutely bonkers stuff. And I think it's all in good productivity for people to learn about these things, understand what's going on around them, to really educate, people around. So because of these macro factors, I just think NFTs is really at the front lines, and that's why driving the conversation to educate people, to generate that creativity around what we're talking about. I think that is really important, and it's sort of the foundation that we're laying right now to really put the conversation in a different light in the next couple of years.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic what you're doing. So just as we're starting to wind down here, what would you say is your fundamental approach to developing trust with like analog market forces? Like, what's the refinable sort of ideology about developing trust? How are you bringing trust to the board?
Yeah, with any business, right? You're looking to build trust by working closely together, having several projects that work out, being honest and transparent, and just being a good business partner. So I think our kind of roadmap to building trust with our partners is that we want to find first people that are willing to experiment with NFTs in general. So we have a couple of these proof of concepts that are actually in the works right now. So once these are sort of out there in the market, and we prove to everyone in the world that hey, there's more stuff to do with NFTs than say just just digital art, and then there's like more cool stuff to do it, then there's more general acceptance from say the business community, the traditional community, and the traditional retail community. So then that's really driving the conversation a little bit forward. So you kind of reduce the anxiety levels and the fearful levels from other companies, and as that builds more and more, I think it will sort of cascade and snowball into something that kind of like how internet and the email took over in the 1900s. I don't have the exact date off the top of my head. Sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. It's weird when you said 1900s. I'm like, yeah, God, I was born in the 1900s. What is going on here?
2000.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, I want to say, you're definitely a trailblazer, and before we started the program today, we talked a little bit. You said, your primary concern right now is changing the narrative around NFT, and in listening to you unpack and sort of navigate all these ideas today, I think you're a great advocate to be, with a bullhorn in hand. So, definitely thank you for coming on the show today. I'm looking forward to spreading this as far and wide as possible, because I think there's a lot that was said. You really did unpack a lot. You really made, I think, a case for less confusion, not more. And really, that's what we were hoping for and inviting you on the show, certainly to give you a chance to, market and discuss Refinable. But I knew that you had this idea that's more personal. You're on this personal journey too, and it really showed. And I want to thank you for that investment.
Yeah, thank you again for having me on. It's such an honor. It's been great talking about just NFTs every day to spread the word. I think some of your questions are highly well thought out. So it's always good to have these difficult questions. And I have to admit, none of us really know what exactly is going on. So hopefully my answers at least give a little bit of I guess like tangibility in the answers of what is possible in the next year or so. what the roadmap is for Refinable, as well as just the general NFT marketplace. I mean, we're out here building out the entire NFT community and supporting that as a whole. So, what's good for the NFT community should be also what's good for Refinable as well. So, thank you for having me on. It's been super fun, I have to say.
Well, I appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
Yeah, I guess for people that are interested in sort of the team and what we're doing here at Refinable, go check out our socials. I hopefully will be able to link these in the show notes below. But if you are free to check out, go to refinable.com, refinable.com. And hopefully you find more information over there. Check out the marketplace, and yeah, definitely have fun, guys.
Great. And I also just wanted to point out that Refinable is on the Binance Smart Chain, which we discussed. And for those of you who say don't deal with Binance Smart Chain previously, if you would like to interact with the Refinable marketplace as a buyer or seller, you will need to set up within your MetaMask or Trust wallet the Binance Smart Chain network. It's very, very simple. You can Google that, how to integrate Binance Smart Chain in my MetaMask, just so that you are enabled to get on to Refinable. And as far as a buyer or seller, in general, you can go just to peruse.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I totally forgot to elaborate on exactly how to do that. But yes, I think everything that Henry said is on the point. I mean, just a final note from my side is I think there's been a little bit of like uncertainty with the Binance Smart Chain, but of course it's still a new chain, very similar to the NFT community, but it does what we want it to do. And I think the world is really built by builders and not by people who just like to complain a little bit. And so we're out here building what's possible. The Binance Smart Chain community has been very helpful with us, so they're responding to our concerns as well. So we're doing some good stuff here. It's definitely going to be a cool couple of months and into a cool couple of years.
Yeah, I want to say that as a creator who has had to spend upwards of $200 to mint on Rarible, I don't think I've spent more than 70 cents to mint on Refinable, and that is remarkable.
Yeah, I can't believe you paid $200. That's insane. That's just insane.
Are there any plans to have an option to buy BNB with a credit card? Like, I think for new users, you explained it very well that NFTs aren't that mysterious. It's just a smart contract proving ownership. But when they get to the site and they see the MetaMask, I think some of them find it pretty daunting. Are there steps to make that easier for people in the near future?
Yeah, 100%. So we're definitely thinking about how to make the general process a little bit easier. I mean, right now our focus is really on the creation and trading features of NFTs. We do see the first wave of users are people who are already doing interacting with blockchain ecosystems. But yes, definitely in the future, we do want those fiat on ramps so they can swipe the credit card immediately to transact. So that's definitely on the roadmap, and we do want to get there hopefully in the next couple of months. No promises. I think I kind of alluded to this, but yeah, I think these are all exciting developments that we'd love to just get into.
Cool. And what else? What other than art? What are you most excited about next? Is it the ticketing or game items, or what are you excited about after the art part of it?
Yeah, I guess the art is we're always going to be able to support the art and the gaming items. So the different verticals, if I were to just categorize them, is really okay. Digital art is sort of one huge vertical that we're looking to support. We have a listing of NFTs that are created by other people or even other crypto projects. So that's really on the gaming side, and just like say membership items. So all of those we're looking to support. Things that I'm really excited about driving is really those proof of concepts kind of talked about with the different brands about what they can do with the NFTs. So once we have some of these proof of concepts out, then that should sort of shake up the general conversation around NFTs beyond just say what we kind of see on OpenSea right now. So yeah, I think that's sort of what I'm very interested in. I kind of talked about a little bit about examples of engagement with your community or even just like pure storytelling. I think those two are things I always mention, but it's hard to explain them a little bit more in depth without giving too much information away. So definitely stay tuned to our socials and announcements on sort of the different things that we're going to release in the next couple of months.
All right. Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Nick. Look forward to having you on the show again in the future when you have some other things to discuss, announcements, or great steps forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Henry, as well as John. I think the questions tonight were kind of spot on for us, and it's definitely the right questions that's driving the conversation in that direction. So yeah, thank you so much for hosting this.
All right. Well, take care.
All right.
All right, you too. Bye bye.
Bye.